Hello, happy to be back again to continue the design of workflow routes in Pro Workflow System module. Once we have configured workflow routes, workflow stage, route stages, and workflow route transitions, we will set up now workflow route stage transitions. But first, let me remind you that you can get the definitions of all terms, all workflow terms, watching the presentation video titled Understanding Workflows Automation in Odoo with Pro Workflow System module. Let's go straight to it. We are not going to dwell too much on the two selection fields from workflow stage and to workflow stage because it's obvious that they respectively represent the source and the destination of the transition. We will instead focus on the rest of the fields. The first two fields, namely workflow and the workflow transition, serve to determine the context of the transition. Let's talk first about workflow transition, stage transition context. We will do it through our two workflow route examples. For example, the first workflow route is a basic workflow, which contains three stage three stages. If we wanted to, and we need to connect the different stages to form the whole workflow route, we have to create workflow route stage transition to join the different stages. Here we can see that the three the three stages here share the same parent, which is workflow route. So the transition between them will have as context the parent workflow route, which is test basic workflow. Here instead, in the second example workflow route, if you wanted to create a transition from the test creation here to the test items check here, we can see that the two stages have different parents. So neither the edit phase nor the check phase can be the context of the transition because the transition crosses two different phases. So when the parent of the source stage is different of the parent of the destination stage, the context of the stage transition will be the transition of the parent, meaning the transition between the edit phase and the test check phase. This is the context of a workflow root stage transition. Let's recapitulate. If the source and the destination stage have the same parent, the context is their parent, their common parent. If instead they have different parents, the context is the transition of the parent, of their parents. So let's get back to our form. The second set of buttons is here and serve to create process action buttons in the processing context. First, we have the action name and action title. The value of action name will be used as the name of a process button here in the processing context. For example, the confirm order button here in the purchase order will trigger the transition from the RFQ state to the purchase order state. It is the same thing in the processing context. We will see in next videos, the system will create a processing action button with the name set to the value we enter here in the action name. The action title value will serve as pop-up description of the processing action button created in the processing context. The button type, which defaults to primary, is a bootstrap button type, which will serve to choose the type of the button and determine its color. We have also two checkbox buttons. Can be denied. If checked, it means that the transition can be negated, meaning in the processing context, the user will have another option, which will be to unfirm or negate the transition. The denial state, generally it is set to the state related to the workflow from workflow stage. Here, it is the state of the record once the user denied the transition. The denial button type by default to bootstrap warning will determine the color and the type of the denial button in the processing context. Denial action name will be the name of the button, and denial action title will be the pop-up description of the process. Denial process action button can return, if checked, will allow the transition to travel to the opposite direction once the user have confirmed it. For example, when in the processing context, when the user clicks the process action button, the record will move from this stage to this one, and if can return is checked, the user will be presented another button to get back the stage of the record from this time, this stage to this one, the origin. This is the return button, can return and can deny. Now let's implement some of our workflow route transitions. Let's start with, for example, the first. Let's create stage transition for this workflow route. The context is test basic. The first, the from will be creation, the basic confirmation. The action name will be confirm. Action title is the confirmation action button. Okay, can return denial state. We set it to draft. It is a state of the from stage. Close edge here. Warning. The return action name will be, we will cancel the confirmation. Cancel confirmation action button. The denial will be inverse of confirm. Confirm is information action button, and we say we will do repeat the same operation to create the other stage transition from the basic test basic workflow. Now let's create an example of transition of the second example. You can see it here. We will create a transition from creation stage here to test check here. Let's do it right now. So the context is a transition. Let's say the smart user smart design. If we test creation stage, you can see the workflow is adjusted. We can choose the context. It is the workflow transition, and remember the smart design facilitates it makes easy the design of the transition. What we have to do is enter a value for one field. The rest of the field are adjusted. So the action is here is confirm items check, and the title is items check confirmation button. We will not check and return. The denial is it's from creation, so the denial will be to draft, and the denial we set it to confirm items check and promotion button. Now we save. If we get back to the list of, we see our stage transition created. There you have it. This is a stage transition. In the next video, we will start creating workflow procedures. Bye, and see you next.